officially been promoted from dog grandpa to Are you serious?
This is your dog Zeus. He's gonna be so jealous when you're born because right now he's the baby. And you're gonna be the baby. And what's gonna happen to Zeus? Oh, here we are. There, it happened. Stop.
It's a video.
Oh my gosh. Why is there a flash on the video?
I don't know, just go.
Turn the light off.
Just go, babe.
No. Turn the light off.
I wanted to give a video recap of my first birth with Shepherd, and the reason that I want to talk about this is because it has significant impacts on the way that I will be giving birth the second time, because my first birth was a C-section, and also a lot of things happened the first time around that I wasn't super pleased with, and I would love for things to go differently the second time around. And so I wanted to just talk about that and make this video also as kind of a memento for myself and for my son Shepherd, so that when he gets older he can see kind of closer to the day where I was mentally. I already posted a blog post about this, so I'm going to be looking at that to kind of jog my memory a little bit, but definitely there's things that I've remembered, and kind of as I've been reflecting on the birth, there are things that have stood out to me as I didn't capture them in the blog post, and I want this video to be super open and real about it. So anyway, jumping into it, it was July 20th of 2020, which was my due date with Shepherd, and I was actually scheduled for an induction that day. So leading up until that point, I had kind of extra fluid, and two, Shepherd was already measuring kind of big. At my 36-week growth scan, they said he was already about 7 pounds. And so my doctor expected him maybe to gain about 1/2 pound a week up until 40 weeks. And so initially they were saying, we will induce you at 39 weeks because of the extra fluid and because of his size. So those two things in combination, I guess, would necessitate an induction. But when I went for my 38-week visit, I think it was, they said, oh, your fluid looks back to normal, or it looks like normal, and it's not like excess fluid anymore, and so we're actually going to cancel your induction or push it back to 40 weeks because just a large baby they didn't deem as a reason for a medically necessary induction, especially considering that I wanted to have a natural birth at the time. So kind of fast forward to 40 weeks pregnant. I am on my due date. It's a Monday evening. They had told me that they would call me sometime Monday, letting me know to come in for the induction. And so myself and my husband were just kind of sitting by the phone all day. My husband obviously had to work. I had already started taking time off for, my maternity leave hadn't started yet, but I was using my vacation time from work so that I could just focus on the baby and not be like worried about working right as the baby came. And waited by the phone all day Monday, no call. I called them, I think 3 times at the hospital to ask if they were, how they were doing, if they were backed up on inductions. Zeus! 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 No! So called them a bunch of times to ask if they were backed up on inductions or if they thought they would be able to get me in, and they were running behind, so they were kind of backed up. They had a backlog of inductions, and so they said basically call us back the scheduled time that I was supposed to go in was 7 p.m. and they said call us back at 8 p.m. if you haven't heard anything, or 8 or 8:30, and we'll let you know more then. And so that night I did. We went around the walk. We went for a walk around our neighborhood, and then we were just sitting watching TV, and I called them back around 8 or 8:30, and they said, okay, we're still running behind, but we will probably call you overnight, so just keep your phone on loud and be ready to come in, you know, if we do call you in the middle of the night. And so we kind of just accepted that and said, okay, let's watch one more episode of this Netflix show we're watching, and then we'll go to bed and try to get some sleep, and I'll keep my phone turned up the volume turned up really loud so that we'll hear if they call, and then if they call us, we'll just be ready to go in and get induced. So I lie down on the couch, and around 9 p.m. On Monday, July 20th, my due date, I felt this, like, I was lying on my side on the couch, and I felt, it kind of felt like a pop like that, if this is like the baby's head and this is, you know, the bottom of your lady bits. And so it was like a pop, and I audibly heard this pop, and then I felt like water, and I was like, oh my goodness, I think my water just broke. And so I told my husband Jeff, I said, I think my water just broke. So then I stand up, I go, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and check. And yes, it was definitely my water had broken, because it started it was like a large gush after that. And so quickly changed clothes, grabbed our bags, loaded up the car, and we get to the hospital around 9:15. And from then on, things escalated really quickly. Then once we got to the hospital, we just valeted the car at the hospital and went directly up to the ER, which is what we had called the doctor in the labor and delivery unit, said that that's what you're supposed to do. So we went directly up to the ER, and they were going to check and make sure it really was my water breaking, and that I really was in labor. So we went up, and they checked me, and they said, yes, it's definitely your water broke. I had changed into the hospital gown at this point, and they said, okay, well, now we're just waiting for a bed to open up in labor and delivery, and then once you get into L&D, officially you can get your epidural. It was getting closer to 10 p.m. at that point, and I was really, really in pain. So up until that point, I hadn't really felt the contractions very much, because, and I think this is just me guessing, is that because I had this excess fluid, that was kind of absorbing the shock of the contractions, because I didn't feel any painful contractions prior to my water breaking, and I didn't really feel like regular contractions that would prompt me to start using my contraction timer and like think, oh, I'm in labor. So basically my water breaking was the first sign that, to me, that I could notice that I was actually in labor. And so, however, by the time 10 o'clock rolled around, I was very, very much in pain. And so when the nurse mentioned, like, once we can transfer you to labor and delivery, you can get your epidural, I start thinking to myself, you know, an epidural sounds really good. And I know that I had already gone over with my husband Jeff at the time, if I say I want an epidural, that is just the crazy, like, pain talking. Do not listen to me. I don't actually want an epidural. Remind me I don't want an epidural. And so I'm thinking in my head, as I'm thinking, oh, an epidural actually sounds really good, I'm like really in a lot of pain right now. Like, I don't care what my husband says, I'm just gonna tell him, like, as soon as we get into L&D, I'm gonna tell him I want the epidural right now, and don't listen to my husband, basically. I'm the patient, not him. They're not gonna listen to him, they're gonna listen to me. And so, at this point, I think around 10 p.m., or by the time I got into the hospital and they checked me, I was dilated to a 4. I was in so much pain, and the way the nurse described my contractions was, she said that I was contracting on top of each other, and basically what would happen for my contractions was that they were abnormal, in that I would have like a 3-minute long contraction and then only a 30-second long break in between, and they were so painful that I couldn't even speak during the contractions. Basically like starting 45 minutes after my water broke, like around like 10 p.m. and then kind of until I got the epidural. That's the state that I was in. And all of the contractions for me personally, I had all of the pain located in my lower back, and it was just unbearable. It was like nothing else I have ever experienced. There is no pain I have ever experienced that can even come close to the pain of those contractions. And I didn't get the break that, you know, they say like, oh, it's like a 30-second contraction and then you have a few minutes of a break. I did not get that. Mine was the reverse. And so I would only get a 30-second break, and any communicating that I wanted to do, I had to do during that little 30-second break. And then I could see on the paper the lines start to creep up again, and I would just watch the clock. I would watch it counting down the seconds. And like clockwork, it was like every 3 minutes I would get a little 30-second break and then a 3-minute contraction. It was horrible. And I basically had decided prior to the birth, something I heard from actually a doula on YouTube. I forget her name. Anyway, I'll put her channel down in the comments because I found it really, really helpful. But she said that if you feel like pain is something that you can tolerate, and I definitely have had my fair share of physical pain and feel like I can tolerate quite a bit, but if you feel like you're suffering, then maybe consider getting an epidural. And that really resonated with me because at that point in time, I was not in my body experiencing the experience of childbirth. I was in my body experiencing nothing but pain and desperation and suffering. And so that's why I ended up deciding to get the epidural. So at this point, basically, I am just hanging on for dear life. I'm looking at the clock, looking at the paper that's charting my contractions, and just begging over and over again, like, please get me the epidural. I don't even remember what my husband was doing because all that I was experiencing in that moment was pain. Like, I don't know what anyone else was doing in the room. The time seemed to like not exist at the time. I was just in so much pain from the contractions, and it was all concentrated in my lower back. And so finally they load me up into a wheelchair and they're like, we have a bed ready for you in L&D. And so they walk me over to the L&D unit, and I am like, where is the anesthesiologist? Get me the epidural, like begging for it. And my nurse is calling out, where's the anesthesiologist? Get the epidural. She's contracting on top of each other, like all kinds of things, trying to say like, anesthesia, let's go right now. And so finally I was in that state suffering until that was around like 1:30 in the morning, and get into the L&D room around like 1:30 or shortly after. Finally around 2 a.m. the anesthesiologist comes in, and he at first injected me with some sort of, I don't know what it was, but it was something to numb just my back a little bit so that when they put in the needle for the epidural, you don't feel that, I guess. And so, however, whatever he injected my back with just to numb it prior to the epidural, that gave me so much relief because all of the pain had been concentrated in my lower back. And so even just that tiny little bit of numbness and numbing of my lower back made things so much better. And so then right after that, he does the epidural. We do like one pump or whatever, one like the initial to make sure that it's good and to test if it's actually working. And basically the way it felt to me, I think the best I can describe it was my back felt really cold. And I kind of felt like maybe my back was wet because it felt the way that if you had like some water like dripping all the way up and down your spine, and like cold AC from a room like hit that part with the water and it felt cold. That's kind of what it felt like. And so I said, is my back wet, to the nurse, and she was like, oh no, that's just, if it feels cold, that's what the epidural is. And so immediate relief. I was feeling so much better. Finally was able to talk to my husband and was able to talk to the nurses, and they let us know, okay, you know, now from 2 a.m., try to get some rest, and we're gonna come back and check you every 30 minutes and see how you're progressing. And at that point, they thought it would be about 6 more hours until I was ready to push. And so we kind of relax a little bit. Jeff lies down on the couch bed or whatever inside the room and falls asleep. Obviously, like, I'm not super comfortable. They have me turned on my side with my leg like up in the stirrup or whatever, I guess to help my dilation progress. And so it's really kind of difficult to sleep in that position. So I closed my eyes and rested for a little bit, but I didn't really get any sleep. And in addition to that, they would come back every 30 minutes to check me. And so there's really no sleeping going on. That being said, fast forward 2 hours to 4 a.m. So they think I'm going to be ready to push around like 8 a.m., 6 hours later. 2 hours later, it's 4 a.m. They come in, they do the check, and the nurse tells me that I expect her to tell me that I'm at 6 dilated, but she tells me that I'm at a 10, and or she just goes, okay, well, it's time to push. Let me go get the doctor. And so I like yell at Jeff, wake up, the baby's coming right now. And Jeff gets up, he's all bewildered. It's like 4 a.m. at this point. And so more nurses come in, the doctor comes, a resident doctor comes in. She was really, really nice, and I really liked her. I feel like, so something to know is that, like, if you're in there like in the middle of the night like I was, you probably will be delivered by the on-call doctor. And I don't know, I think it's different for every hospital, but like, if I had been able to push the baby out then at that time, then like I wouldn't have been delivered by my doctor. So I think that that's something to consider, is like, just something to know. It's just something that's good to know. I guess if you're trying to get mentally prepared for what birth is going to be like, then just having in mind that it could just be one of the on-call doctors from like your doctor's practice or whoever's on call for the hospital at that time. So by the time everyone gets into the room, it's like 4:30 in the morning. The doctor is in there, the resident's in there. There's like some students in there as well, which kind of bothered me because they were standing really close around the bed and like not doing anything. They're like not holding my legs when I'm pushing, not like coaching me on how to push. They're just like watching, and they're really close. And I'm just like, I'm trying to birth a child here, and if you're not helping, what are you doing so close to me? You need to like back up. So anyway, they are coaching me on my pushing. They say my pushing could not be better. I'm pushing and pushing and pushing until 6:30 in the morning. The baby still has not come out. They at some point had me turn over onto my side and try to like rest for a few contractions so that the baby could like hopefully shift positions, because his head was kind of like sideways. And so that was really hard. I will say that not pushing during a contraction. So thinking back, I never pressed the button for more epidural. I think I just forgot that it was there, and I was so glad for the immediate relief that I had when they first put it in, but I never pressed the button after that. And so I was in as much pain by the time I started pushing as I would have still been without the epidural. And so for that reason, when we would like take a break, which is not a break, because your body still is like urging you to push through these contractions, and they're basically just like, don't push on this next contraction, and you have to fight against that urge to push, and you have to just deal with all the pain. And like I would be like kicking my legs on the table and just writhing in pain when I wasn't pushing, because at least when you're pushing, you kind of are like harnessing all of that energy and you're harnessing the contraction and trying to make that result in the baby coming out. And so because they wanted me to turn on my side so that the baby could hopefully turn so that he could come out, it was so painful, these like breaks. And so anyway, I'm pushing for basically 2 hours straight until 6:30, other than the breaks, which is not a break. So essentially the breaks are worse than the pushing, is what I'm trying to say. Jeff's holding my left foot. We've got the nice and actually value-adding medical student holding my right foot, and the nurse is down trying to help coach me and get that baby out. And I don't know where the doctor was. I feel like she was in and out. So I think around like 6:30 a.m. or 7, they did a shift change. And for that reason, my doctor showed up that I had been seeing throughout my pregnancy, and it was a whole bunch of new nurses. And they let me continue pushing through the shift change and then all the way up until 8 a.m. or 8:20 a.m. And at that point, I've been pushing for 4 hours and baby is not coming out. He's kind of lodged in the birth canal, but definitely not coming out. There was nothing wrong with my pushing. Nothing I could have been doing any better. So at that point, that the doctor tries using what's called a vacuum. So while I was pushing, they had like this suction type device that they were using to try to pull from the other end and pull the baby out. And they said they were going to try that twice, and then if not, they would recommend we go and do a C-section. And I really did not want a C-section at this point. I wanted a natural birth, no C-section, and I was kind of not scared of having surgery, but I just didn't want the impacts on future pregnancies that C-sections can cause. I didn't want to have to recover from a C-section. I wanted to feel emotionally like I'd really given birth, which prior to giving birth, I didn't have any conceptions about like a C-section not feeling like you're giving birth, but I feel like other people do, and other moms too, I've heard, will be like, oh, you didn't really give birth, you like had a C-section. And that is giving birth. And like my labor, the 9 months that I grew my human being inside, like grew my son inside me, and hours and hours of extremely painful labor and 4 hours of pushing. And if someone is going to tell me that I like didn't birth my child just because they had to use a life-saving intervention to try to save my baby's life and potentially my life as well, and potentially enable me to have children in the future, because he was so large that I would have had really significant tearing had I not had a C-section. And if somehow he had managed to come out that way, I just feel like any way you give birth is giving birth, and you have done so much work throughout pregnancy and throughout your labor, and to me it's still something that I emotionally have to keep telling myself. So I'm saying it on this video to like whoever is watching, but at the same time I have to tell myself these things because it's really hard. And I think that like the lies of the world, or whatever you want to call it, can get into your head, and like evil thoughts like that can get into your head and make you feel like, I don't know, just bad about the way you give birth. And that's so not necessary. So anyway, and long story short, I am grateful for the intervention. The vacuum did not end up working. They actually ended up trying it 3 times within like a 10-minute time period or whatever on my contractions. And by 8:30, they had tried the vacuum 3 times, the baby still wasn't coming out, and they're like, okay, I really think we need to do a C-section. And so my doctor told me that. She said, I know you didn't want this, but I really don't think that the baby's gonna come out this way. And I said, okay, I know, and I trust you. Let's do the C-section. And so by this point, there was like 30 people in the room. And I think that they had kind of all assembled like in preparation or in anticipation for the C-section. And so they throw some scrubs to my husband. They're like, put these on, Dad. They start getting me transferred from my hospital bed into like a gurney or whatever, like something to wheel me to the operating room. I don't know if that's still called a gurney or not, but my husband is like, there's no pants with these scrubs, and so he puts on the shirt, and then the nurse who gave him the scrubs is like, put on the pants too, Dad, and like yelling at him, and he's like, there are no pants, and the nurse is like, yes there are, let me see. And so he hands it, and it turns out there was just 2 shirts, no pants. And so then the nurse is like, there's no pants, get Dad some pants. And so finally Jeff gets some pants and puts them on, and we're all headed to the operating room. I'm obviously like crying, I'm a little scared, I'm feeling defeated that like the baby didn't come out after 4 hours of pushing, and nervous for the baby, especially like, are we gonna get him out? Is he gonna be okay? Luckily he was doing great. So throughout all of the pushing, at times his heart rate would go down if I like held my breath or wasn't breathing enough or something. And so they ended up putting an oxygen mask on me just to like keep the oxygen going, even if I was like doing that. But I just needed to keep breathing normally so that the baby would get oxygen and his heart rate wouldn't go down. He was a champ. He is a strong little boy today, and he was a strong baby at the time, and I'm so proud of him. So anyway, we're walking down, we go to the OR, and Jeff has to be separated from me and go to like a waiting room while they're like prepping me for surgery. So they take me into the OR. Then they do, I think they do the spinal. So because I had ended up getting the epidural earlier on in my labor, I didn't need to go under full anesthesia. So that was definitely something I was super grateful for, that like ended up happening off of my plan. Was I didn't plan to get an epidural, but because I had, they could just do the spinal. So that way I was awake during the C-section and I didn't have to be under full anesthesia, and Jeff got to be in the room with me as well, because if I had been under full anesthesia, they said that Jeff would not be allowed into the room. So that was great. So they put me on the operating table. I've already had the spinal. They put it like through the same catheter, I don't know what it is, like whatever, through the same like thing that the epidural was coming through. They put the spinal, and they put me down. I'm sure they do some sort of like iodine, like cleaning my body. They're asking me if I feel certain things, and I'm just like, no, I didn't feel that. Yes, I felt that, whatever. I didn't feel anything, I don't think. And so they're like, okay, you're good to go. There's one person who's standing right by me, like narrating kind of everything that they're doing and talking to me and just asking me like how I'm doing. And I really, really appreciated that. He was super, super nice, and like that is so amazing. I hope every hospital does that when you have to have a C-section, because it really calmed me down to just feel like one of the doctors was just focused on talking to me, keeping me calm, asking me how I was doing, letting me know everything that was going on, because there was an opaque sheet. I didn't have like one of the clear sheets where you can see through. It was just totally like, I couldn't see anything that was going on. It was like a blue one or whatever. So 8:56 a.m. they pull the baby out. I hear him cry. They take him over, they weigh him on the scale. They're like, Dad, come take a picture of the scale, because he ended up being 11 pounds and 9 ounces when he was born. My doctor had initially thought he was only going to be 9 pounds. And so it was kind of a surprise to everybody. They take out my placenta. I guess they like sew me back up. I'm just crying, like, I'm not crying anymore at this point, but I'm very bewildered, really, like, and the only thing I can manage to say is, where's my baby? Where's my baby? And so Jeff, my husband, is holding the baby and he brings him over to me after they've kind of cleaned him up and cut the cord. I don't think Jeff cut the cord the first go round, so we'll see if he wants to do that with the second baby. But Jeff brings the baby over to me and I get to look at him, and Jeff takes like a selfie that I'll put in here of all three of us, and that's the first time I get to see my sweet little baby, and he is so chunky. And I'm just so grateful that he is fine and he's healthy and stable and everything looks great. So that was a moment of just like pure joy. I have never felt anything that, I mean, I've had some really joyful moments in my life, like obviously getting married to my husband, but just knowing that he was born, the baby was born, and he was safe and he was doing great and he was here, and I got to know this, like I felt like I already knew this baby, and he was finally outside my body and I got to like officially meet him, if that makes sense. If you've had a baby, you totally get it. Like you know your baby when they're inside your body, but once they're out, it's like finally this moment that I've waited for so long, and I get to finally meet this little person who I am already so in love with. And so it was just amazing. So not that this spoiled it by any means, but then a nurse comes up and takes the baby from Jeff and basically asks me if I consent to them giving my baby donor milk. And I was like, well, I really wanted to like hold him and breastfeed him. And she kind of snapped at me and was like, well, he could have a seizure. And it really sort of scared me and made me feel very guilty for wanting to breastfeed him myself, and made me feel like if I didn't agree to her giving him donor milk that I was a bad mother already. And I feel like I'd been a mother for like a minute, like less than 5 minutes, and I was already being mom shamed by a nurse for wanting to breastfeed my baby. But anyway, at that point, like that's my kind of emotional reflection on it. But at that point, all I cared about was that my baby was safe. So her saying that really scared me, and I just said, okay, yes, take care of my baby, like do what you need to do, take care of my baby. And so she took him away and I guess was feeding him donor milk from a bottle, which isn't what I wanted. Sorry, I'm just getting really emotional because it just didn't go the way I wanted at all. But, so anyway, so they take him away. They have to run some tests on him because he was so large. They were concerned about him having like blood sugar problems, so they run some tests on him. All the tests come back great. He passes. And finally, but they're done stitching me up, and they let me hold the baby on, I think I was still sort of lying back on like a gurney or whatever, but they let me hold the baby while they wheeled me to the recovery room. And so I went from the ER to labor and delivery to the OR to the recovery room, and I was going to spend a few hours there with the baby and with my husband until they could transfer me to the mother baby unit, and I think it was like 4 hours or something like that. So fast forward, at that point I was so thirsty. I remember asking for water like on the operating room table because I was so thirsty. I think that's like a byproduct of having a C-section or something. And I wasn't allowed to drink anything. Finally, I get to the recovery room and I can have water, which is great. So I drank tons and tons of water. You're not supposed to eat like solid food after you have a C-section, I think, because you might throw up. And if you throw up, that could put a lot of pressure on your incision. And so I did like juices. If my husband went down to the they had a cafeteria or something in the hospital, and so he went down there and got me some of these like naked juices, and mostly at the time though I was just so thirsty and wanted to drink tons of water and wanted to like be with my baby and like try breastfeeding him and whatever. So after that so that was Tuesday morning at 8:56 a.m. was when our baby was born, and they were able to pull him out of me. And the rest of the day we just spent it kind of recovering, getting to know him, letting everyone know that he had been born in our family, and just snuggling with our sweet baby. Then he had tested a little bit high for the bilirubin, and he was a little bit like jaundiced or whatever, so they wanted to put him underneath this little blue light bed thing, but they were able to bring that into our room, so that was great. He could be in the room with us, and we ended up staying up. I think that started on like Tuesday. No, that started Wednesday morning. The blue light tanning bed thing, the baby tanning bed that we like to joke it's called, but it's not really called that. But so he was under there for all day Wednesday, and he had these little like goggles on, but he kept trying to take them off, so Jeff and I would trade off in shifts trying to keep those on him so that his eyes wouldn't be exposed to the blue light. But they had and then I was just pumping like crazy, feeding him via I was breastfeeding him, and then I was pumping, and then I was feeding him with a syringe as well, so that he could get like as much milk as possible to try to flush the bilirubin out of his system, and like kind of, I don't know, get his liver started, like get it all out of his system, as well as having him under the lights. And so the pediatrician at the hospital recommended that we actually stay overnight again on Wednesday night, so that he could be under the lights for 12 more hours or something. So we did that. He was good by sometime during the day, in the morning on Thursday, and so he had passed all his tests. He was good under the lights. They were just waiting for more bilirubin tests to come back and make sure that the lights had done its job before we could go home. And then finally, took a long time to be able to leave the hospital. Like, we had to express to them that we wanted to leave, and then they kind of started making preparations and making sure they did all the tests. We filled out the forms for his birth certificate, and his name, and all kinds of other forms and paperwork, and like they walked us through discharge paperwork. They helped us bathe him for the first time. They taught us like how to do diaper changes and all that good stuff. And then finally around like, I think it was 4 p.m. on Thursday, we finally got to go home, and both my parents and sister and my husband's parents and siblings all came over to our house and got to meet the baby, which was really nice, that because they didn't end up coming into the hospital, because it was 2020, so it was during the height of COVID, so there were no visitors allowed at the hospital. So anyway, that is my birth story with Shepherd Black Price. He is now almost 17 months old. Obviously still reflecting on that birth story. There are parts that make me really emotional, but wouldn't change a thing about it. He is here, he's healthy, I'm so glad, and God wrote his story a long time ago, so we are just trusting in that plan. And now for baby number 2, I will definitely do a kind of a birth vlog as well as a birth story after the fact, and we will be able to compare to how that, or we'll be able to know how that compares to Shepherd's birth story. So hope you like this video. Sorry that I was talking for so long and this video just drags on, but I love watching birth story videos myself. So hope you guys liked it, and I hope it kind of gave some information on what it's like to go into the hospital and give birth and have an emergency C-section, and kind of some of the challenges that I experienced that I hope I won't experience in the next one, and maybe some that you'll experience, and maybe hopefully if you do end up having a C-section, you can feel reassured and encouraged by my words. So anyway, if you like this video, please subscribe, like, leave a comment. I really appreciate it.
What do you want me to say?
Just
Hi.
record.
Okay, I'm being recorded. Hello. What is this for? Shut.
Yeah, sure.
Babe, why are you filming me? Why is there a light?
Go, babe. Come on.
I
We,
feel like I'm in a production studio.
yeah. Well,
Okay, Shep, hello. I'll make this quick because we're not supposed to be taking videos, but don't film don't film my nude body. Don't film my skin. What to say? We just saw you. You look perfectly healthy and really good. It makes me very, very happy. Stop. Jeff, this is a bad angle. You're not supposed to film like up. Stop it. Get away. Yeah, you're going down.
come on.
Stop it. Put it away, please. No more.
Okay, it's off.
It's not off.